This meeting is now called to order. I'd like to welcome everyone this evening. For roll call, everyone is in attendance this evening. We'll now take a moment of reflection and respect, please. Thank you. Confirmation of the agenda, please.
That Council adopts the agenda for the meeting of May 3rd, 2021 as presented.
Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Okay. There are no delegations and public meetings this evening. So the next item up is adoption of council and committee minutes.
Council approves the following minutes: regular virtual meeting of council held on April 19th, 2021, and special virtual meeting of council held on April 26th, 2021.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item is the consent agenda.
That items 7.1 to 7.17 of the May 3rd, 2021 consent agenda be adopted as presented with actions to be taken as noted.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Charlton. Are there any questions or comments concerning the consent agenda? Seeing, oh, sorry, Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick comment. It looks like Miller has done a really good job in getting their message out to the people as we spin into the first week. But at least they made the effort to try and keep the people informed, and that's a good thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barber. Are there any other comments or questions concerning the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. We'll move into action items. The first item up is a proclamation request.
Whereas a recent report released by the Chinese Canadian National Council found there were 1,150 anti-Asian attacks across Canada over the past year, and whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, Section 15.1, states that every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and in particular without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. And whereas every resident in Aylmer deserves safe public spaces without the fear of discrimination based on race, national, or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. And whereas May is Asian Heritage Month in Canada, and further that the Council of the Town of Aylmer does hereby approve the proclamation of May 10th as the Day of Action Against Asian Racism.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. Josh, would you like to just do an overview of this report, please?
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, staff were in receipt of correspondence from the Stand with Asians Coalition. This was correspondence that I presume was sent to all Ontario municipalities for similar consideration. I will just point out that this request is a little bit different than some of the requests that we've received in the past, in that there's no corresponding flag raising component of it. It's simply a proclamation, so essentially endorsing the statement that they've put before us. Owen was good enough to draft a proclamation just with the town branding. So essentially, if the town's in favor of endorsing this, we would have it signed by the mayor, and it would be posted on the town website. And then also we would follow up with that SWAC coalition just to provide notice that their proclamation was endorsed.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. Racism of any sort should not be tolerated in any community. Is there support from council to broadening the proclamation or the day of action to make it against racism, not be minimizing the Asian concern, but to broaden it out so racism of any sort is not tolerable.
Josh, did you want to comment to Councillor Barber's idea?
Certainly, through your worship and to Councillor Barber, I think that there's likely some points that we could make to broaden the language in the resolution as presented and the proclamation as presented. I would probably still argue that the reference to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms is fairly general in that it really is taking a stance against all forms of racism. This one just happens to be for Asian Heritage Month. But if it's something that council sees as worthwhile, we could certainly take a second look at it and just ensure that the final proclamation is generic.
Okay, did you have a follow-up question, Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Worship. The thoughts that Josh outlined, I think, make sense to broaden it out and to make it less specific, understanding that, again, that racism is not acceptable of any sort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. Councillor Oslash, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did, Your Worship. I think this is more specific to Asian racism. I think if we wanted to include other races like Black Lives Matter or Indigenous rights or thing, we should treat that as a separate entity.
Okay, Josh, did you want to give a comment to that?
Through your worship and two members of council, I was going to simply recommend that we could put in a simple whereas statement as the second last one, just advising that no forms of racism whatsoever are tolerated by the council of the town of Aylmer.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment. I like the idea of what Josh just suggested. I know for a fact that this actual event is happening in our community, and it was brought to my attention a couple of weeks ago about some incidents that happened. I know that it's an issue with everyone across the board. I support anything that we put together as far as anti-racism. I just think this one is just very specific to the Asian Coalition, but I'm game for expanding that as well. I just wanted to say that I just don't know if it's being brought to attention to as many people as maybe some other groups have been brought attention to as far as racism. But that being said, I will support expanding this.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, Yeah, I would concur with Deputy Mayor Andrews. I think it needs to be as kind of generic as it can be without being watered down, but it's just a little too specific for me at this point. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Councillor Chapman. You're on mute, Councillor Chapman.
I like what Josh had said about no racism is acceptable. The request was made because it's in celebration of age and heritage. So if we take too much of it away, then we're not supporting what they're asking us to support. So there should be no racism at all. But we have a growing Asian community, and it would be nice to show our support to them. We have many different groups, but this is the one that's asking now.
Yeah.
And I think that we need to show support for them and support for non-racism.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. I support the conversation that we're involved in, and if it can just be broadened out a bit without taking away anything from this intent for the Heritage Month, that's fine with me. And it makes sense.
So what I'm hearing then is what Josh suggested. We're going to still honor the Asian Heritage Month in Canada, but we do want that extra statement put in as Josh has recommended. Are we okay with that, Councillor Oslach?
Yes, Your Worship. Have Josh read it, read the amendment.
Okay,
Again.
certainly. Do you mind doing that for us, Josh, please?
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, whereas a recent report released by the Chinese Canadian National Council found there were 1,150 anti-Asian attacks across Canada over the past year, and whereas the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, section 15.1, states that every individual is equal before and under the law and has the right to equal protection and equal benefit of the law without discrimination, and in particular without discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. And whereas every resident in the town of Aylmer deserves safe public spaces without the fear of discrimination based on race, national or ethnic origin, color, religion, sex, age, or mental or physical disability. And whereas the Council of the Town of Aylmer does not tolerate or accept any form of racism in the community. And whereas May is Asian Heritage Month in Canada, and therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Aylmer does hereby approve the proclamation of May 10th as the Day of Action Against Anti-Asian Racism.
Thank you, Josh. Is everyone clear with that on the resolution? And are we okay with that resolution? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 1521.
That report CAO 1521 entitled Development Agreement 426 Talbot Street West be received for information, and that council consider giving first and second readings to the bylaw authorizing the mayor and the deputy clerk to execute the development agreement between the town of Aylmer and Bunkie Holdings Elgin Incorporated for property located at 426 Talbot Street West in Aylmer.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Ham. Andy, did you want to give a bit more information to council about this report, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. This report seeks to allow another office building to be constructed at the Talbot Trails location. It's been a challenging application as an existing building on site posed some issues around drainage. Staff are, however, confident that the proposed new build won't be anticipated to cause problems, and we're also confident that the applicant, Bunkie Holdings, will develop a quality building at the location.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Charlton?
Through your worship, I was just wondering, like they talk about the Ferguson drain is undersized for currently for what water may be needed to flow away, and And they talk about the pond. What pond is this water headed towards?
Thank you. So there was the pond at the back of the property towards South Street is the one that it would be flowing towards. Part of the problem with the potential application is that on 100-year flooding, the parking lot could get some water in it, and that could impact the existing building. The owner seems confident in the amount of sub pumps that he's put in, but usually when we're considering overland flooding, we wouldn't consider that as a remediating measure. We'd want to avoid any of those potentials, but again, it is the 100-year flooding potential there.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Barber?
Thank you, Your Worship. To Andy, is there any potential for that 100-year flood for us to be liable?
Through you, no. Bunkie Holdings has accepted all. It has agreed to indemnify the town completely in any instance such as that. So, and there's no. It's not like a residential development where there would be some access or egress issue or danger to life. So there is very little risk to the municipality of approving.
Good, thank you.
Councillor Chapman, did you have your hand up?
Through you, Your Worship, my question was the same as Pete's, so.
Okay. Are there any further questions or comments about this report? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report CAO 1621.
That report, CAO 1821, entitled Development Agreement 42 South Street East, be received for information, and that council authorize the amended development agreement as proposed by town staff, and further that council consider waiving the rules of order to proceed with the third reading of the amending bylaw to the bylaw 3218.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Councillor Charlton. Did you want to speak to this, Sandy?
Sure. Thank you, Your Worship. This report seeks to extend a very recently expired site plan agreement related to Assumption School. The Catholic District School Board seems eager to get this project underway, so we want to remove all potential barriers in case they wish to get underway this summer.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Charlton?
Through Your Worship, so I gather this has been on the books for a while, and I think I read 2018 it was on the books, and that's probably before our time, or at least my time on council. Just what is the project? Just an expansion of the school?
Yes, it's an expansion of the school and an additional daycare area. So it'll be of great benefit to the community, we think.
Good, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report clerk 1621.
That report, clerk 1621, entitled Municipal Flag Policy Update, be received for information, and that council approves the municipal flag policy as presented, it being noted that the current suspension of all flag raising events shall remain in effect until a corresponding establishing bylaw may be passed by council, and further that council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to establish a municipal flag policy and delegate approval authority to the chief administrative officer and clerk or designate for consideration at the May 17th, 2021 regular virtual meeting of council.
Thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Chapman. Did you want to speak to this, Josh, and give a bit more information?
Certainly, through you, Your Worship, and two members of council, this is a follow-up report to council direction that was received on August 10th, 2020, where staff were directed to research and develop a revised flag policy. Throughout the development of this flag policy, staff have taken into account the best practices of comparable municipalities and other public sector organizations. Some of the key differences between the proposed policy and the previous flag maintenance policy really have to do with the policy scope. This policy is more sort of more prescriptive in terms of what's acceptable and what's not, providing additional detail with respect to what which municipal facilities are impacted by the policy, protocols for half-masting, additional criteria for assessing flag and related proclamation requests, and finally, an outline of the resulting communications of council approving flag and proclamation requests. So overall, this proposed amendment, the goal of it is really to provide some increased clarity, process and consistency for requests moving forward. Finally, I should note that as a part of this report, staff are recommending that council consider delegating authority to the CAO/clerk or designate rather, to assess and approve proclamation requests moving forward. And that assessment would be based on set criteria by council, which I believe section 4A of the policy. So really, staff would intend to assist with that in order to sort of relieve the administrative burden, allow us to be more responsive to requests, especially if they're time sensitive when we're receiving them sort of in between council meeting dates in the summertime, for instance. But I should note that if there were requests that were sort of not very cut and dry, that were requiring some further analysis, staff would certainly still be placing those in front of council. And finally, I should note that council will remain apprised of developments on that through the consent agenda, and staff would also maintain a public register of approved flag and proclamation requests, just so that council is aware of when public events are, etc. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there questions? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. Josh, what I understand is now the staff would proclamations and for flag raising would come to staff, and they would make a decision. It would have to come to council, basically. As you know, all proclamations came to council in the past, so therefore staff would be taking over this. This is what I understand, right?
Yes, through your worship, and to Councillor Oslach, that's a part of it. That said, though, the recommendation to delegate that authority to staff has been provided in the report as an option that council may wish to consider. I included it in the resolution just as a follow-up to direct staff, but I should note that as presented, the policy as presented right now would still see each individual request coming to the council table. There's not been a delegation of authority formally provided to council for consideration as of yet.
Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Reading over the policy, I think that I would feel comfortable allowing someone at the town office to be delegated to make these decisions. I mean, everything in there is pretty clear. So I can't imagine, something coming across that it would have to be pretty out there for it to have to come to council. So I think that's a good way to have it. But I do think that just delegating this authority to someone at the town makes perfect sense. And the policy looks great.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Councillor Charlton.
Your Worship, I was just going to comment too that, the policy is well thought out, covers a lot of ground. There's a lot of thought gone into it. I've done a bit of researching myself, and I've learned some more about flags and why they're half-mast and what days are chosen for half-masting a flag. So I feel quite confident that the staff can handle this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barber.
Thank you, Worship. I too am comfortable for staff to head this up, and understanding that it is a document that if it has to be adjusted at a later time, can certainly be done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. And are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. The next item up is Report Clerk 1721.
That report clerk 1721 entitled Municipal Code of Conduct Consultation Exercise be received for information, and that council authorizes blank to represent the town of Elmer at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing telephone town hall session on June 8th, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. And further, that council directs staff to take the necessary actions to confirm the registration of member X.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second? Deputy Mayor Andrews and Councillor Chapman. Is there any further information you want to discuss, Josh, about this report?
Through your worship and two members of council, really this session has to do with provincial consultation on how to strengthen accountability for municipal council members. And the real mechanism that this consultation is sort of considering is whether or not municipal code of conducts are enforceable enough, and sort of where the provincial regulatory framework should progress with respect to municipal code of conducts. One final point that I should mention is that even though council is only able to appoint one member to represent the town for this telephone town hall discussion, there is an online survey which is already open, and municipal council members and staff have the ability to participate in that survey before July 15th. 2021. The link to the survey is included as the attachment to the report, and Owen or I would also be happy to send that on to any members of council that are interested after the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I guess we'll start out with questions and comments, and we also have to discuss who we'd like to choose to be on that phone call. So are there questions and comments about this report? Councillor Charlton?
Your worship, just a comment. I can't imagine that any municipal councils just wouldn't be just like ours and get along so well. And yeah, anyway, thanks.
I agree with you, Councillor Charlton. We're all a good bunch of people, I think. We do a good job with the town of Elmer. I'm bragging now. Anyway, we do have to choose someone. So anyone have someone they think we should pick? Councillor Oslach.
I would appoint Councillor Barber.
I do have a question for staff. Are they requesting a councillor, or would they prefer a staff member? That's I'm just wondering if a staff member would understand more of the, rules and regulations surrounding this.
Through your worship and two members of council, I think that's an interesting point, Mayor French. I was just reading the request. I think that they are leaning more towards one member of the municipal council. But if it's council's wish that they prefer a staff member, I'm sure that we could inquire further.
Okay, and I just wanted to get that clarification. Not that Councillor Barber wouldn't do a great job. It's just I want to make sure. Councillor Barber.
Thank you for the thought on the process. I would support staff who have a greater means of access to material than a member of council, if it is appropriate that a member of staff be that sitting member. That's my thought.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Oslach.
Yes, Your Worship. I would agree with Councillor Barber that a staff member should sit on that telephone interview, but the staff member will come back to council and report to council what the survey or what the province has been decided. Maybe. I'm just asking.
I would think so. I'm sure the staff will jump in and explain that a bit further.
Yeah, through your worship and to Councillor Oslach, this is an ongoing consultation. I suspect that the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing will be producing, some sort of an executive summary of the data that was collected on this process, and if staff are provided with any useful materials, upon their potential attendance, it certainly would be within staff's capacity to circulate members of council to ensure that they're kept up to date on this item.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Any further suggestions? We do have to pick someone, so it's up to council. Deputy Mayor Andrews?
So I do support having someone, one of our staff members on board, but I really want to highlight that every council member should be completing the survey in lieu of not sitting in on a meeting, whoever is designated. So as far as delegating a staff member, I'm not sure how to go about doing that. Maybe we should see a show of hands who's interested.
Andy, did you have a comment?
If it assists council, I'd be happy to attend the meetings and sit in on behalf of Elmer. I'm also on the AMCTO Board of Directors, and we're taking a policy position on this item on Friday, so I might be able to provide council with a bit more of an in-depth understanding of both AMCTO's position and what's going on at the conference itself.
Well, that sounds great, Andy. Thanks for stepping forward. Council, are you fine with Andy attending this meeting?
Yes.
Okay, any further questions or comments? So would you read the resolution one more time, please, Josh, now that we've picked someone?
Through you, your worship, that report clerk 1721 entitled Municipal Code of Conduct Consultation Exercise be received for information, and that council authorizes Andy Grizel, Chief Administrative Officer, to represent the town of Elmer at the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing telephone town hall session on June 8th, 2021. And further, that council directs staff to take the necessary actions to confirm the registration of Mr. Grizel.
Okay, with that, are there any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is report clerk 1821.
That report clerk 1821 entitled Employment Modernization Compressed Workweek Plan Endorsement in Principle be received for information, and that council approves the compressed workweek model in principle, and further that council directs staff to prepare a formal work plan for consideration at a future meeting of council.
Okay, thank you. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Josh, would you like to go over this? I know council's quite interested with this report. I've talked to several council members about it, and we need a bit more information, I think. Please.
Certainly, through your worship, we were, Andy and I have worked on this report a fair bit just in tandem to this point, and I think with your permission, I'll allow him to provide the background information to start.
Thank you, Josh. Andy?
Yeah, I'll probably make some introductory comments and then I'll pass it off to the clerk to speak to the specifics of the report. But at a high level, we want to begin a dialogue with our staff upon what returning to the workplace will look like. There's been some recent surveys that have indicated that employees may leave employers if they're required to come back to work. So to some degree, we want to start gauging the sentiments of our staff now so that we can try to develop approaches that will continue to set Elmer apart as an employer of choice. In terms of the 4-day work week, there was a very large study done in the UK that showed an increase in productivity related to that, even when employees' hours were not extended. Even if this isn't an option that council wants to pursue, I would suggest that there's some value in us as an employer beginning a dialogue with our staff about different options. It would show them that we're listening to them and we want their input on how we can continue to foster a creative and productive work environment for them. And with that, I'll pass it on to Josh to kind of provide the specifics of this option for council.
Thank you, Andy.
Certainly, through your worship and two members of council, I should start this just in saying that very much a high-level report at this point. Staff have seen several public sector organizations, most notably the municipality of Zora, successfully implement a similar program. And as the CAOs noted, we're really going through the steps right now, whether it's this specific option or exploring other options of sorting out how we can work towards sort of improving some of our employment practices in offering sort of a full compensation approach rather than just a pay equity approach. So in this report, staff have taken it, at a very high level without spending, a ton of time at this point. Staff have looked at some of the case studies and sort of applied it to our circumstances at the town. through the identification of strengths and opportunities, and then weaknesses and threats. You know, I don't know that I necessarily will go into detail on all of the strengths and weaknesses. I'm sure that members of council will have specific questions there, but I should mention that one of the items that really made it easy for Andy and I to agree that, you know, this was an option worth considering and at least putting in front of council to consider approving in principle has to do with the expansion of you know, the level of service with really no added costs. One of the benefits to this approach is it's sort of a win-win in that we're offering an improved work-life balance for certain staff members, while also increasing our number of hours that we're open to the public at Town Hall. By being open from 8 until 5 p.m., we're hoping that we can catch some extra folks that perhaps work during regular business hours. So essentially, we would be open for 45 hours per week instead of 40 at no additional cost. I should also note that at this point, it appears that such a model would be limited in scope to staff that are currently working a 35-hour work week. That simply has to do with the logistics of the way that we can make up the extra time. And I'll also say that as far as you know, the thought of customer service disruptions or you know, challenges brought on by certain staff members only working a 4-day work week. You know, I've had some interesting discussions with other staff members that are working in organizations with this type of model. And the piece that always seems to come up is, you know, how great of an opportunity it is to create internal redundancies within your organization. I think that, you know, the town of Elmer has seen a fair number of staff turnover in the last several years. And by looking at these, you know, some of these models, it gives us a very good reason, a very good rationale to be cross-training staff members and, you know, to ensure business continuity throughout the week. And I think in a lot of cases as well, some of these, you know, what we perceive to be, you know, threats or weaknesses are actually very much opportunities to, you know, start producing some of our own talent internally. And as well, you know, just to have a better quality staffing complement into the long term to ensure that we're best serving our community.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, we got lots. So I'll start with one and just work my way across. So we'll start with Councillor Charlton.
Through your worship, I see, Josh, on the report, you talk about Team A and Team B. Once you're on the team, are you a lifer or are you able to switch teams every once in a while? So would you be stuck working Monday to Thursday and Tuesday to Friday, or?
Through your worship and to Councillor Charlton, I think we've found that in looking at our staffing complement, the Team A and Team B sort of comes from who your opposite would be in terms of building that redundancy. So for myself, I'd be looking to Owen, who's the deputy clerk, has all of the the capacity to work as the clerk. On those days that I would be off on the Friday, he would be filling in for me in the capacity of the Director of Legislative and Corporate Services. As far as flexibility within the current plan, staff are really looking forward to learning a little bit more about some of the logistics around, especially how vacation works. At this point, without council approving this type of transition in principle, the CAO and I really didn't want to create an undue or sort of extra workload for the human resource and finance staff that will ultimately be doing much of the legwork to figure out the logistics of this type of option. So I wouldn't be able to speak to specifically what would happen when somebody on Team A or Team B is on vacation, but I know it's been properly applied and implemented in other municipalities of a similar size.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chapman, you're next.
Through your worship, I like the idea of the staggered work week, extending the office hours. But what I like most is the cross training. I think that that's an absolutely fantastic idea, and it does help our staff to grow, and it shows that we have trust in them as well, that they can do more than one job, and it does give them their opportunity to work towards the next level that they'd like to take. I really like this proposal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barber, you're next.
Thank you, Worship. I think the devil will be in the details. This has to be well thought out. The criticisms are mentioned in briefly in topic number 4. We also have to be consider the fact that the 40-hour work week people may be a little disappointed that one segment of the employees are being treated differently than they are. And it touches on the business community. It's certainly a perk for the 35-hour work week people to be working a 4-day week, and every weekend is a long weekend. I think every employee wants to be there at some particular point, but we just need to know better what the pluses and the minuses are. There'll be some on both sides. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barber. Deputy Mayor Andrews.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I really like this. I think work-life balance, we've lost a bit of that working from home because you're at home all the time, you're putting in more than your 40 hours, and it just kind of blends in with your home life. So going back to work, when that does actually happen, I think it makes a lot of sense to achieve that work-life balance, to go to a 4-day work week. And like it's already been mentioned, there's been studies that prove that, you know, this is a productive way to do business. This is the way a lot of corporate world is now moving to. So to see us take that proactive approach shows our forward thinking in our community. You know, you can't argue with the SWOT approach when it comes to these kind of initiatives. And, you know, just like other things have been mentioned, we need to monitor it. And maybe there are some kinks and things that we need to work out along the way. But it's great. It's a win-win. I think it's a win-win for the staff. It's a win-win for the public. Yeah, I think it's a great approach. I really like it.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Andrews. Councillor Oslach, you're next.
Yes, Your Worship. I have only one question. Basically, we're going to study this for till fall. Will a report come back to council so we can vote on it at that time? There's no mention in the report about bringing it back to council and council voting on it. Because I would like to see the final report after the studies and all the recommendations all summer, and a report come back to council.
Councillor Oslach, in the recommendation, it states that council directs staff to prepare a formal work plan for consideration at a future meeting of council. What I'm understanding from our staff is they're just asking our blessings that they can look into this option. There's lots of things to look at because we've all heard there's pros and cons. I think staff are going to delve into it and really check out and talk to the other staff members to see what they think, and then they will make, you know, some suggestions from the staff that they've interviewed, and they will come back to council with a full report. And as you know, all this type of thing has to be approved by council. I hope I haven't given wrong information. Josh, is that correct?
Yeah, through Your Worship, I'll let the CAO also add on to that one. We've had some discussions at the high level about the next step, but I would agree that the real rationale for this report is just to ensure that council and staff are on the same page, so to speak. Just being that there is a fair bit of research required, we just don't want to be misallocating staff resources towards initiatives that aren't feasible. So I think that's really the objective.
Andy, did you have further comments?
No, just you're correct, Mayor.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to say that I think it's a great idea, and I love that we're forward thinking, and it's amazing. Good idea and good thoughts. I'm really on board with this, and I think it's a great way to retain staff, and we will actually gain many benefits. Our town residents will, and our staff. So I think it's a win-win situation, and I look forward to seeing the final information in the report that you're going to be bringing to council at a later date. Councillor Oslach?
Yes, your worship. Will the staff outreach to the business associations and the public to get their input on this new proposal?
Andy, do you want to answer that, or Josh? I'm not sure which one of you would like to answer that
I can
question.
maybe take a crack at it, and if Josh has anything else to add. Well, we don't anticipate that there will be any impact to the business community or external providers except for an increase of service right now. So what we were primarily focusing upon was making sure that we don't get a lot of backlash internally, just making sure that we do a lot of collaboration with internal staff to make sure everybody's comfortable with it before we move forward, and to give them kind of lots of notice, and to also hear if staff have any other ideas that they'd like us to present to council, because a lot of the best ideas that we'll ever get come from our frontline staff. They know how to do the work a lot better than anybody else, and they're in it every day, so they might even have some additional incentives or ideas that we could present to council.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Oslach?
Yes, yes.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments about this report? All those in favor? And it's carried. Thank you. Are there any matters of urgency or new business? Okay, we're to third and final reading.
That council gives third and final reading to bylaw 2621, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of an agreement between the Corporation of the Town of Elmer and ThinkDocs Incorporated for the provision of an electronic records management system, Laserfiche.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Charlton and Deputy Mayor Andrews. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. The next item up is first and second reading.
That council gives first and second reading to bylaw 3021, being a bylaw to authorize the signing of a development agreement between Bunkie Holdings, Elgin Incorporated, and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at 426 Talbot Street West.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Oslach and Councillor Ham. Are there any questions or concerns? Seeing none. All those in favor? And that's carried. The next item up is suspend procedural policies.
That council suspends the procedural policies to proceed with three readings of bylaw 2921, being a bylaw to appoint a fire chief and emergency management program coordinator, also known as a community emergency management coordinator for the Town of Elmer, and bylaw 3121, being a bylaw to authorize the amendment to bylaw 3218, respecting a development agreement between the London District Catholic School Board and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at 42 South Street East, Elmer.
Okay, someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Chapman and Deputy Mayor Andrews, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. And we'll move into three readings, please.
That council gives three readings to bylaw 2921, being a bylaw to appoint a fire chief and emergency management program coordinator for the Town of Elmer, and bylaw 3121, being a bylaw to authorize the amendment to bylaw 3218, respecting a development agreement between the London District Catholic School Board and the Corporation of the Town of Elmer for the development of lands located at 42 South Street East, Elmer.
Okay, someone to move, someone to second. Councillor Barber and Councillor Chapman. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Are there any inquiries by members? Okay. Statements and committee reports. Okay, report of the mayor. I do have something to share this evening. Josh, did you have that picture you were going to show council? This evening, for the report of the mayor, I would like to recognize the great work that is being done by several high school classes in our community. Grade 9 students in Mr. Arnett's classes have been helping to clean up Aylmer parks, including Steen, Balmoral, Optimist Parks, the disc golf course in Steen Park, and bank areas of the Catfish Creek. This community service is exemplary and much appreciated. To recognize these students and Mr. Arnett for their good deeds, I will be sending a certificate of appreciation to East Elgin Secondary School on behalf of the town. I would also like to thank the Aylmer Express for providing great coverage on such a positive local story. It really makes me proud to represent Aylmer. And while I'm at it, just want to reiterate what a great town we live in and what great community we have here, and everybody's so wonderful. So I can't express that enough. Okay, notice of motion. Okay, meeting closed to the public.
That council moves into a meeting closed to the public at 7:50 p.m. to discuss the following matters. Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 1221 relating to land disposition unsolicited proposals, and Chief Administrative Officer report CAO 1721 relating to 335 John Street South update. Both matters pursuant to section 239 2C of the Municipal Act as amended, as the subject matter pertains to a proposed or pending acquisition disposition of land by the municipality or local board.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Someone to move and someone to second. Councillor Ham and Councillor Charlton, are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. And just take a couple minutes to move into closed session.
This conference is no longer being recorded.
All right, we'll just hold tight for one moment. We'll just wait for Owen to confirm that the stream is finished with.
Can I have a second, Mary? I'll be right back.
Yep.